to get realization there. I mean, actually, it's impossible. And you run into all kinds of contradictions. There's a beautiful sentence here in Prabhupada's purport about says those who are following the impersonal way to spiritual realization, for them the path is difficult. They have to understand the unmanifested representation of the Supreme through such Vedic literatures as the Upanishad, and they have to learn the language, understand the non-perceptual feelings, and realize all these processes. I always get find this expression humorous. Is the non-perceptual feelings. What's that? They are the feelings, perceptual or perceived is just another name for feeling, and perceiving is more or less synonymous. So these are the feelings that you cannot feel. Realize that. Try to realize that.
I did.
You did?
Yes.
Wow.
But I didn't feel it. But I didn't realize it.
You did realize it?
Yes.
Oh.
But I didn't feel it.
But how do you realize it? Realize it means that means seeing, experiencing, perceiving. That's realization. You can have some theoretical concepts in your mind, in your head, but when you realize, that means actually that's connected with experience, isn't it?
Anyway, it's just words.
Okay.
It's words.
Okay. I'm not gonna be. I'm not on that level anyway. Well, it's just a fantastic Prabhupada. Sometimes he has a brilliant way of using language. So it is the non-perceptual feelings. Actually, if you look at it, it doesn't make sense, and that's often the problem with Mayavad. I mean, that's when you get into all these things that doesn't make sense. There are different places where Prabhupada presents Mayavad philosophies, and in Chaitanya Charitamrita there's some places, and I think it was Bhagavan Das, who was transcribing, and he was one of the transcribers of Prabhupada's books, a very good one actually, and then Prabhupada, he had dictated some Mayavad philosophy that's in the purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he was struggling. Prabhupada, I cannot make sense out of this. And Prabhupada said, "Thank you. It's not meant to make sense. It doesn't make sense. You should be worried if it makes sense to you. If you can make sense out of it, then you should start becoming worried because it doesn't make sense." But of course, it's difficult to write it down and express it, and like that. And it means there's some places where Immaculate Prabhupada is what is it? One of the first followers after Shankara. He's paraphrasing him or directly quoting him. Sadananda Yogi or something like that. You don't know that place. But if I prepared it better, then I could have presented this these couple of sentences there. It's just anyway. I cannot even. It's really far up in one sense, and actually, the more you look at it, the more bewildered you become. It doesn't make any. It sounds very, very deep, very profound, and you get a feeling, I'm just stupid. I don't know. I mean, it must be true or something like that, but it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it, not at all. I don't know what it means, and that's often that's the case with my art philosophy. Sometimes it sounds like very deep, profound, and like that, but it doesn't make any sense, and no one can explain what it means when it comes down to it, because it doesn't make any sense. It's not logical, and that's a symptom of, when you have when philosophies that are are not true, faulty philosophies, they will end up with all kinds of contradictions that cannot be solved. And that's and my art philosophy and personal philosophy is the best example of philosophy that doesn't make sense when you get down to it. Personalist philosophy that makes sense, as I said, it's everything falls into place, and it completely corroborates with what we can experience. So we might get into, the mind might get into, where does God come from? If everything comes from God, where does God come from, like that? Okay, that's beyond we cannot realize, or maybe we cannot understand that. We can once it's just accepted, but at least makes sense for what we can observe here. This world there is evidence of a very incredible intelligence behind this world, behind nature, all levels of nature, and we are definitely spirit souls, and these things that they are, and we are controlled. We are not the supreme that we can see. There's someone who's controlling it, and so on. It can make complete sense with what we can observe, and also it makes philosophical sense if you go deeper and so on. But one gets to a point of you might say a wall of inconceivability, but that's just part of existence. It's simply part of existence. So I'll try to stop here.
You mentioned this verse from 12th chapter. That says Deha Vati Avattati.
Yeah.
That it's very difficult, impossible to understand for those who are embodied. Does that mean that one can realize, my question is more, in the Brahma Jyoti, when you are there as a soul, do you have thoughts, do you have realizations? Because this verse more or less implies that you can realize it when you're not in the body.
Yeah, I don't know that it's Krishna's way of, again, being a little ironic. And if you can realize it when you actually are in the Brahma Jyoti, I can't say too much about that. It cannot. It's definitely not the ultimate realization. Brahma Jyoti is a fallen position, Prabhupada points out. Sometimes there's discussion with Jiva. Did they fall from Brahma Jyoti? Prabhupada said no. Brahma Jyoti is a fallen position. So you don't fall from a fallen position, you already fall. And there is a realization, but if you start having thoughts and desires like that, boom, then you immediately, unless you rarely, there are, some can actually progress from Brahma Jyoti to the spiritual world, but that is complete exceptional, but it does happen. But generally, they have no information of the personality of Godhead, and therefore, when thoughts start coming, when desires start coming, then they come down to the material world.
In this connection, also this Brahmanahi Pratishthan verse, Krishna says it's the source of ultimate happiness.
Yeah, the foundation, not the source. I think it's the basis of happiness. Yeah, you have to be on the Brahman platform to come to ultimate happiness. Brahma Buddha Prasanatana Sotati Nakanshati. The Brahman platform is just a foundation. One is completely neutral to material existence, beyond the modes of nature, doesn't hanker, doesn't lament, is equal to all living beings. This is a Brahman platform. there you can engage in devotional service. To me, Krishna says. So yes, Brahman is a basis.
Yeah, but in this verse, Brahman, he speaks about the impersonal Brahman, right? The importance.
Yeah, Brahman only pratishta ham
Amrityasya.
Sasvatasya Tadamdasya Shukrai.
Sukasya Kantikasya cha.
It's one of these. It's one verse that I don't grasp it completely. The verse that particular verse. It comes after M2U01295, that one who is engaged in devotional service without interruption immediately transcends the modes of nature and comes to the level of Brahman. And so there, the Brahman means a state of consciousness, that one attains beyond the modes of nature. So, and the next is on basis of that, on the impersonal Brahman. That's how it's translated. But how do we get just from the individual's state of consciousness to the, talk about the whole Brahma Jyoti and the basic. I don't grasp it completely. Maybe.
You mentioned a lot of how Mayavadi philosophy doesn't make sense, and that there's no real Mayavadis actually. There's no good Mayavadis here you can have a discussion with. But still, we meet so many people in the street who are very much influenced by it. So how do we get to the point where we actually establish Krishna's philosophy and get that commonly accepted?
Now I'm thinking we have Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met some good Mayavadis, Samabhava Bhattacharya, Prakas and Andasari, and they have really good philosophical discussions. And in the end, they surrendered to Lord Chaitanya because they were rational. That was their characteristic. They could accept rational arguments, and they could understand when they had been defeated, and then they would surrender. And that's the problem. Most people are not on that level. If you talk about just, the world we're living in, you can defeat them, but they will not surrender. Generally, it's like that. So what to do? Well, Lord Chaitanya's program is, what is the program for the masses? Yeah, Kirtan and Prasadam. They're Prasadam cases. When you have someone who, Samabhava Bhattacharya is not like a madman. You meet people who are mad, and most people are mad to some degree, or simply too proud to involve themselves in the discussions and be defeated. Because for most people, discussions means I want to win a discussion. There's in the purport in the Bhagavad Gita 10:30-31, Prabhupada writes there are three kinds of arguments: Gyalpa, Vitanda, and Vada. You know this distinction?
And Gyalpa is it that you say something which actually supports the opposition's argument?
Yeah, which also supports. Yeah, exactly. And simply, that's Gyalpa. Which is very, you'll find that when someone starts, sometimes you hear people arguing, and if you listen, they're just flying all over like that. They don't even know what they're arguing. And then 2 minutes later, you'll find that suddenly he's taking the other position. Now they're just arguing for him, like it's just free talk, out of control. And vitanda, when you simply want to defeat your opponent, that's called vitanda. So that's just an ego thing we just want. But to establish the real truth is called vada. And Krishna, he's present there. He's not present in vitanda, he's not present in jalpa, he's present in vada. Actually, therefore, it's when you have a really discussion about facts, you might say, or like that, and you try to actually establish a point, even like I say, that's why science in one sense is so, and even has actually there's a very deep satisfaction in proper science, because actually it's vada in a limited area, but nevertheless Krishna, he is present when true conclusions are established. And but it takes a quality of the persons who are involved. There has to be no egos involved. Everyone has just to be looking at the facts and then reaching to the conclusion that the facts speaks. But you don't find it's very difficult to find someone who is willing to argue. It's a rare, honest, humble person you can meet, and then you can convince them with some philosophy. And most people are not on that level, so then you have to be nice to them and give them some prasadam and just give them a good feeling. That's most people on that level. Good feelings. No. That's little sutras, women like that. They want good experiences, nice feelings, and like that. Then they're very attractive.
That's why you can't really argue with a person who's not building his arguments on scriptures.
No.
Doesn't just say anything.
Well, yes. I mean, people nowadays don't have scriptures. There's some people who actually can accept logic. Logic is also a genuine way to knowledge. I mean, it's limited, it is empirical, but still there are rules of logic, and if someone is actually accepting and following the rules of logic and reaching logical conclusions, that's I mean then that's all. That's also you can also come to establish some actual truth that way, and you can meet. Actually, it's not, if you can meet someone on a logical platform, then that is very, very nice. It's a little rare. May I have your permission to stop the class? Is this from now on we have like this every day?
We try that way.
Jai.
Jai.
Skriv bare.
Ja.